Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name's Andrew Barber, and I'm a senior contributing editor here at eSchool News. And I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation. And this is the second in a three-part series that we're doing on diverse learners, all of which are sponsored by Fuel Education. And today we're going to discuss accelerated learners and how a blended learning program can meet the needs of these students. And before I hand things over to our speakers today, let me just take a couple of moments to explain a few things about the console and how to ask questions and so on. First, today's event is going to be recorded, and in a couple of days, we'll send you an email that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And second, please ask questions. Whatever you do, don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. And I hope we'll have about 5 or 10 minutes at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We also have a chat function, which you can launch from that blue group chat icon down at the bottom of your screen. A lot of audience members like to talk with one another about what they're doing in blended learning. So, talk among yourselves, or if you have a problem with anything on the console, you can use that to contact me or the eSchool News team. But I do have one favor to ask of you. Please don't use the chat function to ask our panelists questions. They're simply not going to have time to monitor the chats while they do their presentation. So if you have a question for them, use the Q&A panel instead. And I also want to draw your attention to the additional resources panel on your console, where you can access a whole bunch of information about teaching accelerated students in a blended setting, as well as Fuel Education's course catalog. And don't forget to register for the final webinar in the series on social emotional learners by clicking on the link at the bottom of the panel titled Today's Sponsor. And with that out of the way, let me introduce you to the first of today's speakers. Renee Aboud is Director of Educational Solution Services at Fuel Education. And Renee leads a team of education specialists that are responsible for creating innovative and successful online and blended learning programs. And she specializes in working with administrators through all stages of a blended learning implementation. That includes strategy, design, planning, and evaluation. And prior to joining Fuel Ed, Renee was a classroom teacher in both Oregon and Virginia. And I'm going to leave it to Renee to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Jin-Soo Huh. Welcome, Renee. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Andrew. It is a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the introduction. So before I get started with our keynote for the day and share a little bit about Jin-Soo, I thought I'd take a few minutes just to share a little bit about Fuel Education. Fuel Ed partners with thousands of school districts across the nation, many of which I've had the great opportunity to visit and meet with such exceptional leaders in innovative education models. The schools that we partner with share a common goal, which we at Fuel Ed are privileged to support by providing products and services that support a personalized learning experience for all students. And we do this by offering a wide range of solutions that meet the needs of students in pre-K through the 12th grade. So you can see from kindergarten readiness all the way to career readiness pathways. And so the model of online and blended learning usually comes out with the need to meet students who are struggling in school and in the need of remediation. And it is valuable and a much needed solution. And we find that in solutions such as credit recovery programs, alternative learning, dropout prevention programs. But in addition to those solutions, Fuel Ed looks at personalized learning to meet the needs of all learners. And that includes your accelerated learners as well, providing them the same types of opportunities, but in a way that enhances and challenges their learning. So you can see that in things such as expanding course offerings, world language solutions, AP, and college and career pathways. And we're going to dive specifically into those accelerated solutions today. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to our keynote speaker. Jin-Soo Huh is the Executive Director of Personalized Learning at Distinctive Schools. He has taught middle and high school math in the DC region, New Orleans, and Chicago, and served as a teacher leader in implementing one of the nation's first one-to-one iPad programs. In his current role, Jin-Soo refines personalized learning models and supports educators through all of the implementation stages. Previously, he did similar work as the Director of Technology at KIPP Chicago and at the Personalized Learning Manager at Alpha Public Schools. And I have been very fortunate to have met and worked with Jin-Soo about a year ago, I'd say, at a blended learning event. And I'm excited to be working with him here today. And so, Jin-Soo, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Renee. And it's always just so great being able to work with you and continue to work throughout the year. And it's been cool to kind of see how personalized learning and blended learning has evolved, even in just that 1 year span that we've known each other. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. And I just also want to mention, as Renee said, I worked a lot with technology with the one-to-one iPads when it first started, and now there's been that huge wave with Chromebooks. So our schools are, at the Sync the Schools, are a mix of one-to-one with Chromebooks and iPads mixed in. And, you know, Renee mentioned that I was a former math teacher, and that is probably the thing that's most dearest to me, is being a math teacher. And I can go on and on, especially around middle school math, and kind of geek out if there's any math teachers out there. Shout out to you guys there. And also to middle school teachers, because they're my favorite sweet spots there. And then I also have been lucky to work with organizations and speak with organizations and share the work that they're doing as a columnist for the EdSurge platform, the online newsletter around educational technology, and gotten to see a lot of schools and work with schools, not just my own, in implementing personalized learning and blended learning and other next generation models through organizations like Leap Innovations and 4.0 Schools down in New Orleans and Leaps here in Chicago. So when we think about our students, you know, we talk about the jagged profiles that they have. And if you've read The End of Average by Todd Rose or heard his TEDx talk in Sonoma County at the Myth of Average, you're familiar with this graphic where sometimes we dangerously group students as high kids or low kids or medium kids and try to just teach the middle for all of it, just kind of hoping for the best. That, you know, if we teach the middle, we're going to get all of our kids kind of somewhat and kind of fit them in there. And if you look at students having jagged profiles, you know, all students have areas of strengths and also areas of development that they need, and, you know, sometimes some average areas on there as well. And if we design our schools so that they're only trying to hit the average, we're actually missing out on designing for anyone, including our high flyers on there as well. And so, you know, we think about our, you know, as a teacher, I remember that, you know, you have 30 to 35 students or, you know, give or take a few in front of you, and trying to meet every single student, getting to know all the students, their strengths, their interests, their passions, whatever it may be, can be a real challenge. And trying to just cram into one size fits all isn't going to work. And Renee, I know you have 3 young boys. Yeah, can you tell a little bit about your sons and kind of, you know, what they really are into and kind of the differences between them, even in one household?
Sure. Yes, so I do. I'm the mother of 3 boys, 2 in high school, 1 in middle school. And actually, I see this in each and every one of them, even when it comes to their homework and the way they process their work, from their interests, the way they strategize. Everything they do is uniquely different than the other. And they each actually have a strength that I wish that we had more ways to enhance and encourage, but we are obviously limited to what is offered at their local school. So, for example, my oldest son is really interested in finance. Let's just say he loves money. So he's really into investing and wanting to make money and save money and grow his money. But he's also extremely talented in math. So he's in these high accelerated math courses. So he's probably going to take some AP math and maybe down into some very complicated math classes. But more than that, he really is interested more in the finance level of things. And we do wish, outside of what we can offer him with books and resources, it would be fantastic to know that that can be something that is targeted in his math class to keep his interest.
Thanks, Renee. So, you know, just kind of building off of that and thinking about the various ways students learn and speeds and different interests that they have on here. You know, I think about a typical classroom that we have, and most of the time we teach 1 objective per day. And, you know, the idea is you learn a lesson, and then the next day you build off of it. The next day you learn off of it, and you build off of it. And you just kind of keep going 1 lesson a day for the most part in most classrooms. So if you're a student like student A, this is great for you. You're mastering it, you get it, you move on, you learn the next lesson, you build on the foundation from the day before. Great, you're good to go. The hard part is when it's someone like student B, when a student might need for one objective or a skill set that they're not really that quite familiar with, or just need a little bit more time. They just need a little bit more time to get to their next learning objective. The issue here is, though, if a student is behind on just even one area, especially in a subject like math or even reading where things build on each other and you haven't mastered it, you're not going to be able to be successful, and it can be disastrous because you missed that one key concept. And all you needed was just a little bit of extra time. On the other end of the spectrum, we also have some students, depending on the topic, that just going to excel and just rock out. Some students might have an affinity for finance, or like Renee's son, or it might be, there's just a real interest in geography or whatever it may be, and they're just rocking and rolling straight through. But in many ways, we punish students for working ahead. We tell them, no, stay ahead. Stay with us, stay with the class. I know that you're ready to roll, but you need to stay with us. And we kind of punish them for their passion and their interest on there, and keep them at the same pace. So we know that the statistic is 1.2 million high school students drop out every year. And that number is really, really alarming for lots of reasons. But I think the one thing to take away from that we want to draw your attention to is that at least 50,000 are known to be intellectually gifted. So these students aren't dropping out because they don't have the aptitude. They're dropping out because they're bored. It's not sparking their passion. And so this is a really, really scary thing. So how are we making sure that these 50,000 students are staying within schools and we're tapping into their potential? So I think blended learning plays a major role in bringing that flexibility to students and being able to bridge that gap. Students are able to work at their own pace, and teachers are also able to meet individually in small groups or individually with students and give targeted instruction. And group students based on projects, interests, whatever it may be, so that they're really, really able to work with each other. And we're seeing this in a lot of schools right now. And the good thing is that students aren't staying in the same groups depending on the topic or the subject or even that individual objective. Teachers are able to see this is an area that a student is really excelling in. And this is also really great for some of our even high kids where there's an area of weakness where they're sometimes afraid to show that, and being able to work together with a heterogeneous group and work together and really get targeted instruction on there. The other thing that you're starting to see in products like FuelEd and other online programs is that there's really strong data dashboards that teachers are able to use so they can see when students are struggling or see when students have mastered something and they're ready to roll to get an extension activity or to move forward on things. This can change from various lessons as well, so it's not that there's always a high kid or there's always a low kid. It depends on the day and what they're working on. And I think this is the area that we're seeing a real opportunity to really work with our accelerated students. When students show that they have a good understanding of a subject, this can open so many doors for deeper learning. So for example, students can engage in problem-solving extension problems for deeper learning. And projects are just a great way to really dive deep in it. We're seeing a lot of passion projects, so where students who have developed the mastery, teachers are opening it up saying, what is something that you really wanted to explore that, may not, like, so for Renee's son, it could be something like finance and being like, connect it to school, and we'll find a way for you to run with it and, present on it and really motivate them and tap into that work on there. We're also seeing opportunities for other programs through online courses. For example, we may not have a Mandarin Chinese teacher, but a student may be really interested in learning that. And normally it would cost us an FTE to pay for something like that, and we couldn't justify the cost for one student who really wanted to learn it, or a group of students even for that matter. But with resources like this, they're able to jump in and work on world languages or other program offerings that we just can't offer given our resource limitations and staffing needs on here as well. So again, like the Richfield elective, so we may not have a computer science teacher, but there's an opportunity that we can work with our organizations to offer these programs as well. And I think also similarly this career exploration. Sometimes that kind of gets pushed to the side. But really being able to develop that with students who have shown aptitude in various areas and go, great, like, let's apply this and let's actually explore your passions and interests. And, you may uncover that's not one of your passions, but, as you find, and that's also good to know, and as you're moving forward on here, you're able to do that. And so we're seeing a lot of these opportunities where students are doing their own even things like novel studies, jumping in and making presentations and doing that real deeper learning that we really crave as educators and not that surface level. This also frees up our teachers in order to work with some of our students who really do need that remediation time. So while students are becoming more self-sufficient and working and doing these projects, the teachers also get freed up to work with some students who do have some deep misconceptions or gaps in learning, and also frees them up there. And with that, I'm going to pass this back to Renee.
So Jin-Soo gave some great examples of different types of ways that schools can enrich and accelerate students. And I thought I'd take some time to share a little bit of what I've experienced at Fuel Education and in my role working in blended schools, where I've had the opportunity to work hand in hand with schools to build and design the various online and blended models, how they've actually taken those scenarios that Jin-Soo mentioned and how they actually execute those in a school district. So I've seen where middle schools have started to consider the opportunity not just for adding extended electives into those middle school students, but to even possibly offer high school courses for credit to those students as well. So having the ability for students in middle school to work ahead and gain that extra high school credit. Sometimes that might be in the form of during the actual year, the middle school year. I've seen schools offer jumpstart classes over the summer for 8th graders who are transitioning into high school, and offering them those opportunities to either take a class that is of interest, like Jin-Soo had mentioned, some interest classes, or even just a class that they know can give them that jump start. Maybe it's an elective class, or maybe it's something that is career exploration, where it's giving them options for exploring various types of careers to get them on the right foot. There have been also a lot of schools that have looked at the potential of a 0 or 8 period day, where students are provided an extra class in their schedule. And the students can do this at their own pace within the school semester schedule, or they can set these up as early bird classes where students, and if the school starts at 8:30 in the morning, I've seen schools do a 0 period and they offered classes at 7:30 in the morning. In that situation, students are able to take an extra class or earn an extra credit, take those interest level classes. So instead of just offering the expansion of learning and accelerating the interest and engagement of the student, you're also helping them to see a lot of value and buy-in because they are earning a credit at the same time. Overall, as Jin-Soo mentioned, students do have that jagged learning profile. So we know that many students who fall behind their schedule often continue to spiral. Just like he mentioned, that the dropout rates, a lot of those students are gifted students. So you may have a student who is accelerating in one particular subject, but might be falling behind or failed a class at a different subject level. And this spiral could be because the student is realizing they're behind on opportunities and they struggle to get themselves caught back up. So offering these opportunities meets the needs of all students and helps them gain control of what they might struggle with and allow them the various opportunities to accelerate where they can. So I'll give you a great example. Jin-Soo mentioned that Fuel Education has some products that help to support exactly this type of model of accelerating students. So I want to share with you a little bit about our Fuel Ed Summit curriculum to show how the system and the curriculum help to support the various level of learners, including those accelerated learners. The idea of taking a learner profile and understanding that the personalized learning experience is important despite where the student goes. And we take that model of personalized learning and create it into this online curriculum. The instructional model, as you can see, allows for varied learning pathways. So each lesson, you can see at the top, starts with a get ready for learning. This whets the appetite and prepares the student for the standards in the lesson. When moving to the next 2 phases of the lesson, the system will deliver one of 2 pathways to the student, the on-level or the supportive content. This can be manually set or it's defaulted and adjusts based on the student's performance throughout the course. In addition, you can see that students can be delivered additional enrichment activities to accelerate their learning, and those enrichment activities provide higher order thinking to enrich the learning of that specific targeted skill. FuelEd also realizes that in many situations, students may need a set of skills that allow them to be successful to enrich their learning. And so therefore we offer academic content in 3 levels of learning. So where most students would enter at a comprehensive level, this is your standard student entering at a standard level, we provide also a core level where students can have a more focused framework of content. But we also offer an honors level where a student may not necessarily be prepared for the AP, but can use that acceleration and challenge and be provided more opportunities for expanded learning and practice. So overall, if you think back to what Jin-Soo stated about students with a jagged learning profile, FuelEd courses can ensure that each student can have that jagged level of content as well. A student may be struggling in math and therefore need some remedial courses, but might also be enrolled in an honors or AP level English course, or might be in their 3rd year of a world language. It might open the door for their class schedule, offering additional support where it's needed. So the scenarios are endless. I remember working with a school district once where they were hosting a parent night and they were talking about expanding offerings to all of their students across the district. And in that session, I must have heard somewhere between 15 and 20 parents get up and ask questions that were very specific to their child's needs. They explained who their child was, what their needs were, and what they were looking for. And each time the superintendent responded and said to them, "We will make it work." So how encouraging that was for parents and for the students to have those options and to know that their district was willing to work with them to expand and offer the levels and scenarios that each student needed based on their skill level. So before we get to questions for Jin-Soo, we wanted to also share with you some things to consider or questions to ask yourself as you find the right solutions and opportunities for your accelerated learners. So first, think about what opportunities currently exist in your district. It might be good to evaluate what offerings you provide and what the needs are across your student demographics. Also, does your approach create the demand by offering those credit-bearing enrichment opportunities? And it may not necessarily be with credit. It could be with a partnership with a local community college. It could be with career and college pathways and explorations. And also how great it would be to reach the many accelerated students by providing these opportunities outside of your school walls or through extended schedules. So those are some great things to think about as you start to consider ways that your district currently supports accelerated students or what you're looking for to continue to provide those. So with that, I know we've got quite a bit of time left over. So I'm going to kick it back to Andrew and we'll be able to take some questions from the audience.
All right, well, thank you so much, Renee, and thank you, Jin-Soo, for a very interesting conversation. And we do have some questions coming in. Some, I think, are probably better aimed to you, Renee, and others at Jin-Soo. And Jin-Soo, I want to just come back to you with your experience in working with schools and as you look to tailor instruction for individual students and let them go at their own pace. I want to talk a little bit about the faculty side of this and putting the place in terms of faculty development and what you need to do in terms of faculty development to create the environment in which this can take place. Can you talk a little bit about that and your experiences there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that faculty investment is probably one of the most important things that you need in order to make this shift. So if you're on this webinar as a teacher, you're probably one of the early adopter teachers trying to find solutions out there. So definitely kudos to you on there. And if you're an administrator, I would suggest finding one of those like really excited teachers. It might be someone who just has an affinity for technology and trying to use it. Or it may be someone who's a veteran teacher who, has kind of, really done well, but is looking for the next challenge. And we have a mix of those as well on there. Things to think about is like really appealing to the why they got into teaching and kind of their pain points on there. I know for me that technology, the thing that I was trying to find with blended learning and with personalized learning was that I would go and teach that same lesson and know that I would have some students who were bored in my class. because they already knew the material and I was forcing them to sit through the material again. Or on the opposite end, I had some students who just didn't have the right foundational skills. And so whatever I was teaching them kind of made them lost at points. And, if you wanted to do this, it's, very possible, but you'd spend hours upon hours creating personalized pathways for every single student. I think the big win that you can get with teachers with educational technology, with platforms like FuelEd and others, is that you're able to show that there's adaptive ways, or there's walkways, and there's also feedback that you can get. Because I know that as a teacher, I remember when you'd give problems for students to work with, there would immediately be like, 15 hands up being like, can you check my work? Can you check my work? And you'd obviously want to go and check everyone's work, but, sometimes manpower-wise, you just couldn't do it because you're yourself. So I think, the programs are able to give that instantaneous feedback that students crave. And good, because it also reinforces whether they have, one thing that I worried about a lot of the teachers, if a student did all the work and I just never got to them, but they just had a huge misconception throughout, I just reinforced a bad habit for them on there. So I think working with teachers to invest them in the why behind it and what it is on there, and also invest them by involving them in helping select the product. Help them see which products are available and what advantages there are for each of them and what role they can do, and have them roll with it on there. I think the other big thing that you can help is with just making sure the infrastructure is all in place. Internet is something that we often get overlooked, but sometimes, we might roll out a one-to-one place and realize, oh, wow, we just didn't have the bandwidth for it at all and have to upgrade it. So making sure of things like that. And I think the biggest thing is, as an administrator, making sure it's okay, and also as a teacher, telling yourself this, that it's okay to fail, and you're going to have some bad days where you try rolling out an initiative like a program, and there's going to be days that, it just didn't work, and that's okay. But going back and being able to tweak it, because I think that that's kind of the thing that, I would beat myself up on those days. But knowing that it's okay to, you're trying something new, and it's not going to work 100% of the time, but being able to bounce back and tweak it and make it work on there. And I think the other big thing on that note is also being very transparent with your students and saying, we're going to try this new thing, and the reason we're going to try it is because I want to, be a better teacher for all of you guys, and I want to be able to have more individual time with each of you guys, and I think technology is going to be able to help me do that. And those conversations are great.
Okay. All right, great. All right, terrific. Well, thank you for that. And Renee, I'd like to also turn to you on that, because, obviously in your capacity, you work with administrators in implementing blended learning. Can you talk a little bit about what processes you go through in working with administrators to lay the groundwork, and particularly around the faculty issue?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like this is an area of passion for me as well, because I've worked quite heavily with a lot of schools and have seen the amazing transformation that have occurred. And I love when I meet with a school for the first time, and some of the teachers, you can tell through body language, are stressed or frustrated, or I would say a little fearful of what this change might be. But with encouragement and the district leaders understanding that that is a common emotion and feeling that they're coming into, that the more resources you provide them and the more grace you provide them in the mistakes they may make or changes that they might make midway through a new implementation or a new model, that there may be changes. I have an image I generally show to teachers when they're looking to make changes, is that a person's path, it kind of has this image of your typical path looks like you're going to have a start line and a finish line, and it's going to be a straight path. But the reality of it is there's going to be dips and bumps and all sorts of different obstacles that you'll have to go through to get to that finish line. So I believe in truly continuing the professional development for your educators, because if they don't have those tools and resources, making that shift and change is difficult, and that needs to include a lot of collaboration among their peers as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now, on a related note, does Fuel Education have teachers available itself?
Yes, Fuel Education does offer state-certified teachers to provide the instruction. And we also do provide the professional development and training for teachers as well. So in both types of models where schools are looking to use their own teachers, or in the example that Jin-Soo gave where you may not have a Mandarin teacher, but you do have a handful of students who want to take Mandarin Chinese, then we can offer that instruction as well.
Okay. And so those teachers, can you talk about how those teachers are brought into the situation and how they're sort of incorporated into the overall school process? I mean, how do you schedule that? How does it all work?
Sure. So our teachers are trained, certified teachers who work for Fuel Education, and they are certified and teach our courses only in the content area that they're specialized in. When a school selects or decides that they need an instructor, so let's go with the Mandarin example, Mandarin Chinese,
yeah. Okay.
they would elect that they need an instructor to go along with the course enrollment. That instructor will see that they have received a new student enrollment, and they will reach out to both the student and who we call the mentor. The mentor would be the person at the school district who would be responsible for the student's online learning. So that may be a counselor. It may be somebody who is coordinating. You might have an online coordinator at your school district. But our teacher will stay in touch with both the mentor and be communicating with the student. What they do for the student is offer the support through online, what we call sync sessions, and provide the students the office hours as well, where the students can reach out to the teacher during their office hours. They could pick up the phone and call them, email them, and we also have an academic chat support line as well. So students have a variety of ways to reach out to their instructor. And then, of course, as they go through the content, the instructor is there to grade papers, give them feedback, and be that continuous instructional partner with them through the course content.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you very much. We also have a question coming in from Brian in the audience, who wanted to get some kind of explanation about the data dashboard. Can you explain the data dashboard a little bit further?
Sure, Renee. Why don't I just give a general overview of dashboards I've seen, and then if you want to give more specifics on Fuel Ed's dashboard, does that work for you?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So a lot of the programs, I think about when I was a kid and I would go on computers in elementary school and I would be put on Oregon Trail or Super Munchers. And while those programs were engaging and I had a great time playing them, still remember dysentery and all of that, there was really no data and no progress or any information that my teacher was getting about what I was doing. There might be some teachers who, mark, how far did you get on the trail or reflect on your learning or something like that. The nice thing about a lot of the new online programs is that data is now being fed to the teacher in a dashboard such that it can show you on a class level or even on a school level or even on an individual level what kind of questions students were having trouble with, what kind of questions students were really breezing through, and general trends across. So you can see in a classroom, like, wow, like 90% of my classroom have all mastered this activity. Great. As a teacher, then you're able to go, great, I can pull those 3 students aside who didn't get it and remediate them really quickly, and then we can do a whole deeper lesson project instead of doing a surface level instruction that I was planning the next day to just introduce the subject. So you can kind of pull that information to even drive your learning on there. So I think that's been really powerful, and also it serves as an accountability mechanism because you can go on and see, hey, we dedicated 30 minutes of time to be on Fuel Ed or whatever program, and I see on my dashboard that you never logged in or you were only logged in for 5 minutes or whatever it may be. And I found that teachers especially like using that dashboard to hone in on students who are struggling and being able to pull them and be like, hey, I noticed you struggled in this lesson. Let me do a quick lesson with you and go over it, or can you tell me about what your struggles were and really personalize that instruction and really hone in on them. So you're moving it still away from that whole group mentality and really targeting every single student's needs there. And Renee, do you want to explain a bit about Fuel Ed's data dashboard?
Yes, absolutely. So I love the topic of dashboards because as you were saying, Jin-Soo, you took it back to when you were a student. I take it back to when I was a teacher about 15 years ago in the classroom, and it was difficult to manage and track where my students were. I think I used just an Excel spreadsheet at the time where I was able to try and do my best to identify where my students were in their pacing and in their academic achievement. With our Fuel Ed data dashboard, what it provides is a dashboard for multiple users. We even have a student dashboard. So students have the visibility into every course they're taking, what their pacing currently is, and where they should be based on the expected pacing of a start and end date that they put in. So they set their goals for when they wish to complete it, and then the pacing keeps track of that for the students. In addition to that, the teachers and administrators have complete visibility into every student across their school or district. They're able to see where their students are, their pacing, their achievement. And what is even great is in our newest technology, you're able to even drill down to the standards level and pull some standards reports. And those reports allow teachers to not just see that these particular students at the assessment level or quiz level, but when those are tied specifically to skills and standards, then a teacher can identify exactly where the student might have made their error or might be lacking in their skills and be able to target that particular skill. And all of that is done through our dashboard.
Oh, terrific. Let me move on to one other question that's come in from the audience, and I'm going to look at Renee for this one. Are the Fuel Ed courses aligned with Common Core standards?
Yes, they are. Yep, Common Core aligned.
Okay. And is there, where would someone go if they wanted to see what that course catalog looks like? Where do they find it?
Sure. So I believe that we've got the catalog listed in the, if you're in the bottom left-hand side of the screen, the additional resources, the course catalog is available.
That's right.
And then I also have the Summit curriculum flyer in there. That was the curriculum that I showed you that has the multiple pathways that students can go down that are adaptive within the curriculum.
Okay. All right. And well, I'm going to advance the slide, and we're going to look at one other resource which is available for the audience. If you see the URL up on the screen, the resources.fueleducation.com/blended-learning. That's another great resource for blended learning resources, and I'd encourage you all to go take a look at that. Well, we are going to probably wrap up a little bit early today, but before we do that, I would like everyone who is in the audience to take just a couple of seconds rather, to fill out this quick poll that we have up on the screen about just to reflect your interest in the various aspects of blended learning and learning about a little bit more about what is available from Fuel Ed and their Summit product. And I'll just give you a couple of seconds to fill that out, and then I will take us on to our final slide. Unless Jin-Soo or Renee, do you have anything further you want to add this afternoon before we wrap this all up?
I think this is Jin-Soo again. Oh, go ahead, Renee.
No, I was just going to thank Andrew and you for joining us. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that going back to the idea that, there are just no average students, and making sure that we are addressing all students in our classroom, including our accelerated learners. And I think that's often a challenge. I think oftentimes we kind of dismiss the academics, the high flyers, by just being like, oh, great, they're already, really ahead. We don't have to really worry about them. But I think that personalized learning and blended learning really gives us the opportunity so that every single student, regardless of level, is able to learn something new or learn something deeper every single day.
Oh, that is a great goal, and thanks for explaining a little bit about your efforts on that front, Jin-Soo. And I really just do want to thank both you and Renee Abood for a very interesting discussion and presentations today. I also want to thank Fuel Education for its support